burst of super-compressed gas flashed from the side of the SM-3 Block 1B interceptor as its divert and attitude control system came alive in the complete silence above the atmosphere. 10 tiny thrusters adjusted its path, guiding a 150-pound package of sensors into a razor-thin intercept corridor roughly 100 miles above the Red Sea. There was no dramatic sound in space, only the instant breakup of a Houthi ballistic projectile as it met the interceptor at a combined closing speed of Mach 13. The digital engagement network had identified the object 2 minutes before contact. What happened next was the final moment of a 1,200-mile chain of data, moving almost instantly between space, sea, and land. When Houthi media released footage of mobile launchers in the Yemeni desert on Friday, March 27, 2026, they tried to present it as a major step forward. But in reality, they had revealed the exact kind of signal the U.S. Navy's hidden surveillance web was built to detect. The launch from Sana'a activated a high-speed chain reaction involving satellites, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, and an automated combat system designed to process information without hesitation. A space-based infrared satellite in geosynchronous orbit analyzed the launch plume in less than a second. Within moments of ignition, the network had already estimated the fuel signature, engine performance, thrust profile, and airframe behavior. This was the first layer of the detection web. Every major engine ignition leaves behind a digital fingerprint, and this long-range projectile, reportedly aimed toward the Israeli port of Eilat, stood out clearly against the darkness. The satellite created a track file, essentially a detailed three-dimensional model of the airborne threat, refreshed many times each second. That file was then passed to the Aegis combat system aboard an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer operating in the Red Sea. At that moment, the ship's SPY-1 radar had not even fully focused toward Yemen. It did not need to. The system used a method known as launch on remote, allowing the destroyer to release its SM-3 interceptor based on satellite data alone, trusting the wider network to guide it toward the correct path. On the deck of the destroyer, the vertical launch system opened with a sharp mechanical snap. The SM-3 Block 1B rose from its cell on a column of white flame, clearing the ship's mast in less than a second. Its first stage burned out and dropped toward the sea. The second stage then carried the interceptor higher, pushing it out of the atmosphere and into the black edge of space. Once in the vacuum, the interceptor began searching. The digital network was now combining information from the destroyer's radar, a ground-based TPY-2 radar in the Negev desert, and the satellite's infrared sensors. This was the data fusion stage. Instead of relying on one sensor or one viewpoint, the system blended several streams of information into a single, highly accurate picture for the interceptor to follow. Inside the Combat Information Center of the Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, operators watched a composite track appear on the screen. This was not a rough map interpreted by humans. It was a precise, real-time rendering of the object's position in three-dimensional space, constantly updated as the intercept sequence moved toward its final seconds. The Aegis system tracked the Houthi projectile as it reached its highest point, calculating how quickly its outer surface cooled once it moved beyond the atmosphere. What we are seeing here is a level of automation that would have sounded impossible to the sailors who once stood watch with grease pencils and raw radar returns. But this software did not appear out of nowhere. It was built on decades of experience from operators who learned how to read unclear signals, rough radar images, and shifting sea conditions long before the screens became this advanced. For anyone who lived through that transition, or for those currently watching these displays in the Red Sea, here is the question. Does this level of automation make the mission feel safer, or do you miss having that final human instinct when tracking a target? Let us know in the comments. We are reading them. While the SM-3 was climbing, the wider situation intensified. Israel carried out precision operations near Qom, targeting Iranian nuclear facilities and bypassing layered defenses. Iran then sent a large wave of long-range projectiles and drones towards central Israel, while Hezbollah units in southern Lebanon launched more than 100 rockets. The goal was simple: overload the system. It was the battlefield version of a digital traffic jam, an attempt to flood the defense web with so many tracks that its decision-making process would slow down. This is where the triage protocol becomes critical. An integrated defense network does not try to stop every single object in the sky. It scores each incoming track by threat level. Iron Dome and David's Sling were now receiving data from U.S. Navy destroyers, giving them a broader view of the battle space. The system analyzed the path of every Hezbollah rocket. If one was projected to land in an open field or out over the Mediterranean, it was marked as low priority. By letting non-critical tracks fall away, the network protected its limited supply of Tamir and Stunner interceptors for objects headed toward populated areas or key infrastructure. Arrow 3 handled the high-altitude Iranian threats beyond the atmosphere. while David's sling engaged medium-range objects as they came back into denser air. But one Iranian rocket made it through. It hit a residential building in Ramat Gan, east of Tel Aviv. The force of the impact left the structure torn open, with metal bent out of shape and concrete scattered across the site. One person lost their life. That impact was immediately recorded by the defense web as a reverse beacon. Within 400 milliseconds, the system used the point of contact to trace the path backward and identify the likely launch area. Before the dust had fully settled near Tel Aviv, the coordinates of the mobile launcher were already being sent to a pair of F-35 Lightning II aircraft operating near the Persian Gulf. The web had felt the vibration, traced it back to the source, and was already preparing the next move. Meanwhile, high above the Red Sea, the SM-3's kinetic vehicle separated from its third-stage booster. This final vehicle had its own infrared seeker, its own steering thrusters, and its own onboard logic. It was not searching for a general shape. It was looking for one specific section of the Houthi projectile's airframe. The incoming object was moving at more than 3,000 miles per hour. The kinetic vehicle was closing from the opposite direction at nearly 7,000 miles per hour. At those speeds, a traditional warhead is not the main advantage. The defense web relies on hit-to-hit precision, using pure kinetic energy instead of a conventional detonation. When a 150-pound object moving at Mach 13 meets a target head-on, the released force is enormous. Imagine a multi-ton truck hitting a wall at highway-shattering speed, but with all of that energy focused into a space no larger than a dinner plate. The kinetic vehicle's divert and attitude control system fired one final correction burst. The Houthi projectile attempted a last-moment maneuver, but the defense web had already predicted the movement. The kinetic vehicle adjusted and connected with the center of mass. In an instant, the projectile broke apart into cold fragments, continuing along its path as harmless debris before burning up during re-entry. What was intended to be the Houthis' first direct hit on Israel in this phase of the conflict was stopped by a system that had already solved the problem before the launch team's celebration had even ended. The Houthis claimed they were ready to tighten their grip on the Red Sea and disrupt one of the world's most important maritime corridors. Their focus was the Bab al-Mandab Strait, an 18-mile-wide passage that carries a major share of global energy traffic. They believed geography gave them the upper hand. The defense web answered by making distance and terrain far less important. To counter the Houthi threat, the Navy built a closed sensor loop across the region. E-2D Hawkeye aircraft helped maintain a constant watch over the Yemeni coastline, while MQ-4C Triton drones tracked unusual movement near caves, shelters, and mobile launch areas. Anytime a launcher moved into the open, its heat signature became part of the network's picture. Take the case of a Houthi Samad 3 drone. These are simple, low-cost fiberglass aircraft built to create a financial trap. The idea is to pressure the Navy into using an expensive interceptor against a much cheaper drone. But this time, the response was different. An EA-18G Growler picked up the drone's satellite connection. Instead of launching a costly defensive round, the aircraft interfered with the drone's guidance. Its GPS was misdirected, its control link was cut, and the drone dropped into the sea without creating the expensive exchange the Houthis were hoping for. The cost of that defense was minimal: a little fuel, a pulse of electronic energy, and precise timing. The cost of the failed attempt was far greater for the Houthis because every move they made revealed more about their network. That is what makes the defense web so dangerous to an opponent. It learns from every action. It does not just respond to threats, it traces them back to where they came from. While Iron Dome was intercepting rockets over northern Israel, Aegis destroyers were doing something just as important in the background. They were collecting launch data. Every rocket that entered the air added another clue. By connecting the launch points of more than 100 rockets, the system built a detailed map of Hezbollah's tactical positions. That information was then passed into the mission computers of F-35 Lightning II aircraft. Using the data, the aircraft could move through gaps in hostile radar coverage and reach launch areas before they could be used again. The other side believed it was operating from hidden positions, but every launch made those positions easier to locate. In Yemen, Houthi commanders were preparing another wave, but by then, the network had already detected the pattern. An unmanned surface vessel, essentially a quiet sensor platform equipped with infrared cameras, had been watching the launch areas. When crews began moving to reload, the defense web assigned the response to a pair of F/A-18E Super Hornets operating from a carrier beyond the horizon. The next launch cycle was interrupted before it could begin. Everything that happened on Saturday morning was ruled by a single, unforgiving clock. From the moment the Houthi projectile ignited in Yemen to the SM-3's direct intercept in space, only 94 seconds passed. Inside those 94 seconds, the system processed thousands of calculations. It had to separate the main projectile from its discarded booster stage. It had to coordinate with Israel's Arrow 3 batteries to prevent two systems from engaging the same target. It also had to assess whether the intercept was successful or whether another defensive round would be needed. This is the new reality of modern conflict. It is no longer only about who has more hardware or who makes the loudest public statement. It is about who can collect, process, and act on information faster. Yahya Sarriah and the Houthi leadership are still thinking in terms of territory, resistance, and mountain strongholds. They believe that controlling terrain means controlling the fight. The U.S. Navy is operating in a different era, one built around information, timing, and sequence. Across the region, sensors, aircraft, ships, and defensive systems are being linked into one enormous digital net. As the sun rose over the Red Sea on Saturday morning, that net was still active. The backtrack data from the Ramat Gan impact had been finalized and shared with the fleet within seconds, turning a single point of impact into another piece of the wider battlefield picture. Two F-35C Lightning II fighters moved through the quiet gaps in Iranian radar coverage and released a pair of GBU 53/B Stormbreaker precision munitions. Using tri-mode seekers, they cut through the morning haze and guided themselves toward the exact GPS coordinates linked to the mobile launcher that had fired toward Tel Aviv. Within moments, the launcher was eliminated by a precise 500-pound strike before the crew could complete its withdrawal from the area. At the same time, the network extended back into Yemen. An MQ-9 Reaper, holding position 20,000 feet above a wadi outside Sana'a, detected a second Houthi ballistic system being prepared for launch. The drone did not wait for another attempt. A single Hellfire round hit the fuel support vehicle, setting off a major secondary blast and turning a multi-million-dollar launch system into a burning marker visible from miles away. To open the route for international shipping, a group of Hornets launched AGM-88 HARM missiles toward Houthi coastal radar sites. One by one, those sensors went dark. The defense web was not just stopping incoming threats anymore. It was removing the enemy's ability to track, target, and respond. This engagement showed that distance no longer offers the protection it once did. A Houthi commander hiding in a mountain cave 1,200 miles away, roughly the distance from Houston to Chicago, may believe geography is a shield. But to the defense network, that distance is only a timing calculation on a digital map. The message to every adversary in the region was clear. You cannot win a contest of firepower against a force that controls the sequence. The system does not care about slogans, speeches, or ideology. It only reads movement, signals, timing, and coordinates. Once a launcher activates, it gives the network exactly what it needs to find the source. The attempted Houthi blockade failed to stop the flow of shipping through the Red Sea. The Iranian saturation attack consumed expensive equipment and resources, yet it also exposed launch locations, firing patterns, and key infrastructure to Allied sensors. While Houthi media continued broadcasting threats from the desert, the global economy kept moving through the Bab al-Mandab Strait as if their pressure campaign had never existed. That is the true strength of the defense web. It makes the threat smaller by turning every action into information. The world did not stop that Saturday morning. Energy markets did not spiral. The global supply chain did not break. For the so-called axis of resistance, it became a major strategic setback after decades of investment. For the U.S. Navy and its partners, it was proof that the system worked exactly as designed. The gate stayed closed. The watch remained steady. The sequence held. And somewhere above the Red Sea, the invisible web was already resetting, waiting for the next signal.